Welcome back to Player Foundry and welcome to the first video in the Blueprint Bytes series, where we're going to break down Unreal Engine's blueprint nodes one by one. Today we're starting with one of the simplest but most useful nodes, print string. Print string is like a sticky note for debugging. It lets you print text directly to the screen while you run your games. It's a quick way to check if something is working without setting up UI elements or logging to files. Now, chances are, if you've ended up watching this video due to researching what this node is, then you're probably very new to Unreal Engine development. So before we jump into using this in the engine, let's take a look at it in depth because there's quite a bit going on here. First off, we can tell by the little F symbol in the title bar that this is a function. We will cover different types of functions as we progress through this series, but for now, we can just focus on the fact that it's a function and we can call it from anywhere in our game to make it perform its functionality. Next, see these two white pins on the node? These are called execution pins. Think of them like steps in a pipeline where execution flows from one node to the next. The pin on the left is the input node. This is where the execution starts. When something triggers this node, like an event or another function, it activates. This is done by connecting that thing, be it an event or another function or whatever, to this left execution node. The pin on the right is the output. If we want another action to happen after this one, we connect that next node to the right side pin, passing the execution forward in the sequence. Now let's take a look at the properties that print string exposes. The first property is inString, which is essentially the value to print to screen. It works in two ways. If you already know exactly what you want to print and it never changes, you can just type your message here in the input box directly. This is called hard coding the text. Simply replace hello with whatever message you want to display. But what if you need to print a variable's value instead? That's where this magenta colored pin next to it labeled inString comes in. Often when debugging, we want to see the current value of something in our game, like a player's health, score, speed, or whatever. And in that case, you can connect a variable to this pin, and it will print whatever that variable holds at the time the node runs. Below that, you'll notice this development only banner on the node. This means that print string will only run in a development build of your game. If you package and release your game, the print string node itself will be skipped, meaning any message you were displaying with it won't appear in the final version. This makes it great for debugging during development without affecting your finished game. Below the development only banner, you'll notice this white arrowhead. Clicking it expands a set of additional options for print string, giving you more control over how messages are displayed. Let's go through them one by one. Top of this list is print to screen. This checkbox controls whether the text appears on screen during gameplay. If checked, the message will be visible. If unchecked, it won't. Below that is print to log. If enabled, this sends the message to the output log instead of or in addition to the screen. This is useful for debugging, especially when you need to track multiple messages. I'll cover the output log in detail in a UI deep dive. The next one is text color. Obviously, this lets you choose a color for the output text. This can be super helpful for distinguishing between information, warnings, and errors at a glance. Following that is duration. This one controls in seconds the amount of time the message needs to stay on screen before disappearing. And lastly, we have key. This one's a bit less obvious, but it's incredibly useful. If you assign a key to a print string node, it ensures that only the most recent message with that key stays on screen. For example, imagine you have a loop that continuously counts from 0 to 1 million. If you don't assign a key, every number will stack up vertically, spamming your screen. But if you do assign a key, only the latest number will replace the previous one, keeping things clean and readable. And now that we're done looking at my badly drawn pixel art version of the print string node, why don't we go ahead and try and use the real one within Unreal Engine 5. Here we are in Unreal Engine about to create our first project. On the left, you'll see different industry categories, each tailored to a specific type of work. We have games for creating interactive video games, film, video and live events used for cinematics, virtual production, and real-time rendering, architecture, focused on visualization and architectural walkthroughs, automotive, product design and manufacturing, great for designing, prototyping, and visualizing products, simulation, typically used for training, research, and real-world simulations. Since this channel is all about making video games, I'll stick with the games category. Now, I'm going to start with the third person template. We could probably cover the print string node in any of these templates, but for future planned videos in this series, the third person one is just going to work well. Then we're going to select Blueprint, and we're going to have a target platform of desktop. We're going to set maximum as our quality preset, and we're going to include the starter content. I'm going to call this project Blueprint Bytes, and then I'm going to hit create, and we'll be taken to Unreal Engine's actual game editor. Once your project is created, we're dropped into the third person template. Nothing too complex here. If we hit the play button, we can actually play the game and interact with the environment. But we want to actually use the print string node to display a message in the top left of the screen. You can place a print screen node anywhere, but for this demo, we'll make our character trigger it automatically as soon as the game starts. To do that, we need to open our character's blueprint. Let's go down to the content drawer at the bottom of the screen. Find the third person folder. This is where the template's character blueprints are stored. Open the blueprints folder. Inside, you'll find the third person character blueprint. Double click it to open it. This will bring up the blueprint editor. Make sure you're in the event graph. If yours doesn't open to it automatically, you can click on event graph at the top to switch to it. And that's it. We're now inside the blueprint where we'll be adding our print screen node. In the next step, we'll wire it up and see it in action. Before we do anything, we need an event to trigger our print string node. I'll be covering events in more detail in a later video, but for now, here's the basic idea. An event is something that happens and it can trigger other actions, just like in real life. For this demo, we're going to use the event begin play node. This event fires automatically as soon as the game starts, making it perfect for testing our print string node. Now let's add the event begin play node. It's super simple. Right click anywhere in the event graph. In the search box that appears, type begin play. Select the event begin play option from the list. And that's it. The event will now trigger as soon as the game starts, which is exactly what we need for testing our print string node. Alright, so now it's time to finally add the print string node to our graph. We can right click in the graph again, but this time we're going to search for print string in the search box and select it from the list. And there it is. No more pixel art interpretation. This one's the real deal. Now, let's make sure it actually runs. Remember what I said earlier about execution pins? We need to click and drag from the execution pin on event begin play and connect it to the left execution pin on our print string node. And at this point, if we compiled and saved, it would print the default hello string when the game starts. But earlier I mentioned that there are a few extra settings in this node. So let's click the little arrow to expand them and take a look. And as you can see, all of the options here are the ones we talked about earlier in the pixel art version. Now let's personalize our message. Instead of hello, I'm going to change the text to say welcome to Blueprint Bytes. If I wanted to change the color, I could then click on this color box and choose a new one. But for this example, I like the default, so I'll just leave it as is. Next, we compile and save our blueprint, and then we close it, and that'll take us back to the main editor. Then we can just click play, and there it is. Our message appears in the top left corner of the screen. Now let's make one final customization. I want to make it print the value of a variable, and I also want to make it stay on the screen for 5 seconds. Reopen the third person character blueprint and go back to the event graph where our print string node is. On the left panel, find the variables section and click the add button to create a new variable. I'm going to call this one greeting, and we want to change its type to a string. Don't worry about the other types, we'll cover those in future videos. Before we can assign a default value to our variable, we need to compile it first. So go ahead and click the compile button. Now on the right hand side, you should see a default value box. Let's set it to variable driven print string node. Let's make one final change. Set the duration to 5.0, meaning the message will stay visible on the screen for 5 seconds before disappearing. Now let's actually bring the variable into our blueprint. Drag the greeting variable into the event graph, and when prompted, choose get. Now, before I go any further, I want to say that we will cover variables themselves in a dedicated video soon. But for now, all you really need to know is that this simply means get me the value stored in the variable named greeting. Then go ahead and connect the greeting variable to that magenta pin on the print string node. Then click compile, save and close the blueprint. Go back to the editor and hit play. And there we go, a message that lasts for 5 seconds and is driven by a variable, making it easy to change dynamically in the future. And that's really it for the first video in this series. I know there were some other properties there that we didn't cover, but I actually kind of want to hit on those later when we start covering things like flow control and if logic and things like that. So kind of left them out on purpose. Let me know in the comments if you have any difficulties with this. I'm happy to help out. And thanks for watching. Cheers. Bye.